Yes.
Okay, great.
Geshma,
Yeah.
Kelsey has some work, so she's not going to be able to attend today.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, and
Uh, yes, please.
I
Slowly.
uh, I thought of a debate yesterday.
Okay. What is the debate?
So if it is consciousness, it follows it has an appearing object.
Agree, accept.
So
It has an, oh, wait, a has means like in Tibetan, it has means it has to exist. An appearing object must be posited. It doesn't necessarily, oh, have. Yes, yes, it has. It has. Okay, go ahead. Yes, it always has, even an existing appearing object. Yes, it does.
okay, so take eye consciousness of a pot and eye consciousness of a pillar. It follows its consciousness.
The two, the eye consciousness apprehending pillar and the eye consciousness apprehending pot, the
Yeah,
two. Okay, yes, it follows, it has, yes. Follows its consciousness, yes.
it follows it has an appearing object.
It has an appearing object, the appearance of the pot and the appearance of the pillar.
Well, so take the eye consciousness apprehending a pot
Mm-hmm,
and the eye consciousness apprehending a pillar.
mm-hmm.
It follows they have the same appearing object
Why?
because they have the same appearing object, which is the what do you say, a pot and pillar?
The appearance of the pot and the pillar, or pot and pillar, yeah. The reason is not established.
So it follows um, the two the concept the eye consciousness of a pot and the eye consciousness of a pillar do not have pot and pillar as their appearing object.
Why?
They do have pot and pillar as their appearing object.
I accept.
So it follows the eye consciousness of a pot has pot and pillar as its appearing object.
Why?
Because the eye consciousness of a pot and the eye consciousness of a pillar have pot and
No
pillar as their.
pervasion. No pervasion.
So take cat and dog. It follows it as cat and dog.
Why?
So it follows you can posit the reason why not.
There's nothing which is both. But you ask it differently. You ask whether they each have. You didn't say are the two. You see, like it's different, like saying do they each have? Yes, they each have them. But take the two together, are they both? No. But you see, there's like it's a different way of asking. For
Hmm.
instance, you can say if there's a place, there's a vase and there's a pillar. Is there both a vase and is there both a pillar? Yes, right? But then is are these two both a vase and a pillar? No.
Hmm.
So they both have their appearing object. Having and being is different.
Oh, so those two have the appearing object, which is this, but
Yes.
pot and pillar is not the appearing object of
Well,
these two.
like if of each of them, yes, but not of them together.
Hmm.
I mean, that's kind of a bit of a word debate, but which is
Yeah, yeah.
fine. It is debated a lot. So is do they both means like are each of them having an appearing object, right? So do they both have means in other words, do they each have an appearing object? Yes. The appearance of the vase and the appearance of the pillar. So if you say, are those two both the appearing object of the two minds? No. But are these the two objects that both have? Are these the object, or are are these two each of their respective minds, I mean, the appearing objects of their respective minds? And the answer is yes.
Hmm.
It just depends how you put it. I'm sorry, I didn't I was at the same time looking at something because I received a question, but yes, so venerable teacher, that is a very popular debate, especially with mind. And but you know that in the end, what I mean and what you mean are slightly different things, right? I mean, of course, they both have an appearing object, but are the two the appearance of the vase and the appearance of the pillar, the appearing object of these two? No. But I say that these two minds have each or have the appearing objects, those two, because the appearance of the vase is the appearing object of one mind, and the appearance of the pillar is the appearing object of the other.
And so
Right.
it'd be the same, I guess, for the object of engagement.
That applies also to, that's the same. Do they both have an object of engagement? Yes. Are these two together the object of engagement of both minds? No.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. But I received a question. Let me make sure I understand it correctly. Anastasia posted something in the group. And instead of reading it, because you can all read it, I'll I'll explain it with my own words and make sure that I understand her correctly. So Anastasia is asking how one actually identifies the self that is the object of negation, specifically in the Sautrantika system, where the self is the self-sufficient, substantially existent self. So she wants to understand that process of going from a vague, felt sense of I that appears, for example, when we get angry or when recalling anger, to clearly recognizing the precise type of self that Buddhist texts say does not exist and reaching certainty that it has been identified correctly. Am I understanding that correctly, that first part?
Yes, and maybe to add a little, like yesterday, Gengirmi was kind of saying how his teachers would spend months or years just trying to identify the object of negation. So then I figured, like, okay, then there must be some process.
Yes, I'll talk about that. Okay. So then she goes on to say she's saying that recognizing the object of negations happens conceptually, absolutely, but not through a formal inference. So instead of proving something through a process of reasoning, one is simply trying to locate that mental sense of I that corresponds to this particular autonomous self. So even though this is not the classic progression of doubt, correct assumption, and inference, there's still a shift from uncertainty about whether one has identified the right I to certainty that the identification is correct, right? That's your complete question, isn't it?
Yes, thank you.
Well, first of all, I have a question addressed to you. What is the sequence of identifying the object of negation and realizing selflessness? Do they happen simultaneously or does one precede the other?
One precedes the other, and that's like because once one clearly and without doubt has the object of negation, the negation of that object happens, I guess, with regard. I mean, that one can have an inferential cognizer.
All right.
The
So,
negation, but just
okay.
the identification of the object of negation, I feel like it's not necessarily an inferential cognizer.
Well, okay. So identifying the object of negation, therefore, precedes the realization of selflessness, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what is that mind that identifies the object of negation? Does it have to realize its object in order to attain certainty, or does it not?
It does not.
It does not.
Would hope
What
not.
would be the problem if you say it has to?
The object of negation would exist.
I mean,
Yeah.
realize means valid cognition.
Yeah.
No. You would realize selflessness. If you know that that particular self that you have identified is the object of negation, you realize selflessness,
Yes, yes, yes.
right? You know it's
Mhm.
that which is to be negated, that being negated is in accordance with reality. So therefore, it cannot be. The mind that identifies the object of negation cannot be a mind that realizes its object. Because only a moment later do you then negate it. If you were already to realize that it is the object of negation, then you would absurdly realize realize selflessness. Okay, so it cannot be a realizing mind. So it has to be a mind that is certain. Now, it couldn't be doubt, couldn't be a wrong consciousness. What are you left with?
Correct assumption.
Correct assumption.
Has to be correct assumption, absolutely. So, first of all, it has to be a correct assumption. Now, the key point here is that we're not yet proving the non-existence of that autonomous self,
Yeah.
but we're simply isolating what the mind grasps at when it grasps at the self, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is there's a clear conceptual image of this appearing I. It forms to the mind. It's not an imagined one, but the very I that arises during afflictive states. And then you need to compare this appearing I with the definition, with not definition, but with the way the self-sufficient, substantially existent I is described, and check, does this appearing I that appears to me when I'm angry, when afflictions are active, is that exactly the same kind of autonomous I described in the scriptures? So you need to repeatedly observe and compare until you come to this unmistaken sense, that unmistaken in the sense that to that certainty that this I that appears to you during your affliction precisely matches what is described as the object of negation. And that doesn't come through a syllogism. It comes just from recognizing, from comparing the two. So comparing the two, how it is described and what actually appears to you. And so from the mind, initially there's some uncertainty, but eventually it moves to a certainty. So you may wonder, is this really that self-sufficient, substantially existent self or not? But over time, the match becomes unmistakable. So in that, oh, the sense of I that you grasp at while you're angry, for instance, is exactly that particular autonomous self. Okay, so it's this process of gaining certainty, but not through inference, but through recognition, through isolating this particular mind. But now there's a huge question, because usually when we talk about, first of all, a wrong consciousness, this is just apprehending the autonomous self, right? We talk about apprehending the autonomous self. That then gives rise to doubt that is uncertain about the non-existence of that self. First, moving away from the fact, then eventually moving towards the fact. So uncertain about its non-existence, feeling, oh, it probably doesn't exist. And then there's the correct assumption that is certain about the non-existence. And eventually there's inference, realizing the lack of such a self. So therefore, identifying the object of negation must precede one of these minds or some of these minds. That's different. Do you see? So first, is it there or not? Don't know. Still undecided. Or first, there's a wrong view about the autonomous self. Then there's doubt. Then there's correct assumption. And then there's realization. But identifying the object of negation is different altogether.
Yeah.
So where does it fit in? When do you identify the object of negation before that moment of correct assumption as to the non-existence of this autonomous self? Or does it even arise before doubt, or even arise before the wrong consciousness? When does that? That's the big question.
Maybe I think I didn't write the question well, in the sense I don't mean to identify.
I know
this
that wasn't your
object.
question.
Okay.
I know that wasn't your question.
Sorry. All good.
No. I hope I understood your question. What I just said was, it's a process of identification. So like matching what is in the text and with your own experience. And once you have a sense, okay, those two match, then you come to a correct assumption that identifies, that perceives that particular self, the way it appears to your mind, as the object of negation. All right, so we've come to that point, but then I took it further. From there. My debate is then, when in that process of these other minds, wrong consciousness, doubt, and correct assumption, it must come at some point. Those are not like these three that I just mentioned, wrong consciousness, doubt, and correct assumption, have nothing to do with identifying the object of negation. It's about apprehending the non-existence of the autonomous self, right? That's how we explained it yesterday, how we go through this process. But in between any of these minds, you have to identify the object of negation. So having hopefully answered your question, I ask you a further question. Ask all of you.
First, no?
Pardon?
I feel like one needs to know clearly what is the self that is grasped at, that it needs, one first needs to know clearly without over or under identifying the self, what the self is, and before one can successfully negate it.
Yeah, that absolutely, of course.
Oh,
But
okay,
when does that when does that mind, so that identifying mind is a correct assumption.
Mhm.
But of the three, wrong view with regard to the non-existence of the self, and doubt, and correct assumption, when does that identification, that correct assumption that identifies the object of the object of negation, when does that come? Does it precede the correct assumption? Does it precede the doubt, or does it precede the wrong consciousness?
Maybe during doubt.
No. They can't arise at the same time. So
Okay.
either it's before or after.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Before.
Before doubt. Okay, before the wrong consciousness?
No.
No. Okay. So in order to have this wrong consciousness, don't you have to identify the self-sufficient, substantially existent I?
Except, yeah.
Right? You have to identify and then believe it does exist.
Right.
But
So doesn't that mean you disagree that it's the object of negation?
Oh, I see.
Mm.
But someone who has never heard about the Buddhist teaching.
Oh, that's the next debate. So everyone has identified the object of negation. Because if you see, like, if I perceive just anything, I don't necessarily have a wrong view that perceives a self-sufficient, substantially existent I, right? So I have to have some kind of understanding what that is. So that's your homework. You see, the crux here is this. We all have a wrong view that the self-sufficient, substantially existent I exists, right? If we didn't, we wouldn't have self-grasping. We have the self-grasping mind. We have that innate self-grasping mind. So does that mean that this mind, by implication, denies that that autonomous self is the object of negation?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Well, then we have all identified the object of negation because we've just disagreed that it is that. So think about it. There's a little more to it. And that it's very difficult, yes, as Gengumila explained to you. And I tried to put it in those through words. I mean, it takes time to match the two, to become aware of your own self, become aware, and now match it with the one in the scriptures. So it's not just about saying, oh, self-sufficient, substantially existent I, it's there. There's a little bit more to it. But think about it. When does it exactly come? That's a difficult question. That's a huge debate, actually. Yes, please.
Can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit in a rush these days. So I
just want to make sure okay.
No. Very good point. And hopefully someone can write it down.
Yeah.
My question is, when exactly of the three types of mind, wrong view, doubt, and correct assumption as to the non-existence of the autonomous I, when or in between which of those minds or preceding which of these minds does the mind identifying the object of negation arise? Before the wrong view that asserts the the existence of that self-sufficient, substantially existent I, or between that wrong view and the doubt that doubts the non-existence of that autonomous I, or between that doubt and the correct assumption. Well, just put it in the group, write something what you understand, and I can always add something to it if it's not clear. But yes, where exactly does it fit?
I wonder, Gishma, whether this is also a process, because even to begin to recognize what is coming up, like you get triggered and you notice there is something coming up, for example, in your mind that feels something that is solid, and existing from its own side. And initially, you don't know and you don't even recognize. It just comes up and then you see, you act out. But then later on, you think, oh my God, so that was that sense of that I, when she yelled at me, that came up. So then,
Yes. That's that
so
process. That's what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
yeah,
That's what I'm talking about. First, you're not even aware you have that wrong
right,
consciousness.
right,
And then you become aware you have it, and you become aware of how the I appears to that mind, and you
right,
compare
right,
it to the description in the texts.
right,
And that process takes a really long time to
right.
compare it.
Mm.
Yes.
But
But
still, you're asking when exactly do you, it's
So
in that
is
process.
that when does that correct assumption with regard to this is the object of
Negation.
negation, does
Mm.
it precede the wrong view as to the non-existence, as to the existence of that autonomous self? Does it go in between the doubt and the wrong view, or does it go in between the correct assumption as to the non-existence of the autonomous self and the doubt as apprehending the non-existence of that
Yeah, that's
autonomous self?
tricky, really tricky.
Very tricky. So Anastasia asked me this really great question, and I thought, might as well throw it back at you. As in, like, no, this is great. This is an important question. But I was just reminded of that debate. That is such an important debate. And from that question, it becomes clear to me that you have that understanding. I suppose all of you do. So if the question is clear, there's something to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
But don't cheat. Don't ask Gyumi.
Right, yeah, I have a question
kidding.
though about this. I mean, I know
Yeah.
this is how you said it, but I'm looking at what Anastasia wrote here. And it says, these three minds as to the non-existence of the I, isn't it that first you have to identify like how it exists? So like the perception of existence of the I?
Identify how it exists. It doesn't exist. How can you identify
No,
it?
no, but how it appears to exist, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes. So first, that's what I said.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
you need to
okay.
do is become aware of how it appears to your mind,
Yeah, yeah.
and then match it with the description in the texts.
Right. So in what Anastasia wrote here, it says, as to the non-existence of the I. That's
Yes.
what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I kind of re-explained her question because for that very purpose, I tried to make sure I understand it correctly. But so she is saying, seems to me that identifying the object of negation is done by a conceptual mind, but not through inference, since one is trying to find the referent of what is described as the self-sufficient substantially existent self within one's own mind. Therefore, it is not a classic process of doubt, correct assumption, inference. Well, no, inference definitely not. There could be doubt.
Yeah.
Is it the object of negation or not? But it can never become an inference because that would mean if you know that the object of negation, that the autonomous self that you've identified is the object of negation, well, you know selflessness.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it cannot be an inference, that mind.
She just wrote it.
So that's also what she basically, I think she's saying in here, saying it could not be an inference. It's definitely conceptual. Of course, it can only be conceptual, but it does not lead. Identifying the object of negation does not mean that mind is an inference.
Yeah.
It's a correctly assuming mind, but it's not the correctly assuming mind that correctly assumes the non-existence of a self-sufficient substantially existent I in the first place, because we're not really certain. We have to match that I. And we have to also have a sense, and I give you a little hint, we have to have a little sense of why this is such a problem,
Yeah.
right? Just as a hint. So then it becomes easier. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All
good.
right. Okay, great. Now let's go back to the text. I know you're eager on learning about mind and mental factors, but trust me, that's not that difficult. It seems very difficult now. But there is like a certain way to explain mind and mental factors. And once you figure that out, everything falls into place. But I still want to spend some time on it because it is one of those topics that comes up a lot. But for now, what I would like to add, just to complete the subsequent cognizer, we're not going to read anything, but there's a few things that are explained in the part that I ask you to read on your own, which is basically saying, yes, so the omniscient mind, the omniscient consciousness is always a valid cognition. It's never a subsequent cognition. And then there are passages that Latte Rinpoche mentions, or he mentions in a once or twice. Where is it? He mentions once or twice that the second moment of a yogic direct perceiver is a subsequent cognizer, but he basically completes this section on subsequent cognizers by saying there are also some who say that there are no yogic direct perceivers which are subsequent cognizers, and all of them must be prime cognizers. So there is this view, and that's how I got stuck. That kind of got stuck in my mind, that view, that, and I guess, yeah, you could say there are different views, but that there are either that the second moment of a yogic direct perceiver in a sentient being's continuum is a subsequent cognition. But then there are also some who would not agree with that, especially when you talk about a meditative equipoise, the way it's described in the Chittamatra and the Madhyamika schools. Okay, that should suffice. That's enough on subsequent cognizers. Then let's turn to the direct perception in science and philosophy. Direct perception, it says, do you have the page number?
Yeah, page number 272 at the bottom.
272 at the bottom. Okay, so direct perception can be explained by way of the following illustration. So take the case, or consider the case of someone who has a subsequent cognition realizing that sound is impermanent, a conceptual mind. Having thoroughly accustomed herself to sound being impermanent by way of analyzing it again and again, finally, at the end of the gradual process of moving through the 9 stages of mental stabilization, which are part of the process of generating calm abiding, right? Calm abiding, in order to generate calm abiding, which you need in order to have a union of calm abiding and special insight, you go through 9 stages. Then you develop calm abiding itself. You combine it with the analytical aspect. So you alternate between focus, analysis, until you're able to bring that function of the mind of single-pointed focus and analysis. You bring them together in one single mind, which is described, your mind is described, or the analogy of that mind is a still lake with a tiny little fish moving underneath the surface without disturbing the calmness. That is a union of calm abiding and special insight, conceptually realizing that sound is impermanent. And if you continuously meditate on this again and again, that turns eventually into a valid perception, into a direct perception, realizing clearly without a generic image of sound's impermanence. So realizing clearly that sound is impermanent, unmixed with that meaning generality, that is a yogic direct perception. So that was like a speed version of what's here. I mean, like I gave you a little bit more information. So in other words, yes, you accustom more and more, you get more and more accustomed to the conceptual mind realizing sound is impermanent. Based on that, you then, or not based on that, but as a next step, you then generate the union of calm abiding and special insight. First, you take an object such as the breath or Buddha's body, something easily understood or easily focused on. And once you're ready, once you have calm abiding and special insight with regard to an easier object, you then take sound's impermanence, develop that union again on the basis of the impermanence of sound. And once you've attained that union, you continuously meditate on that until it eventually turns into direct perception. Okay, so that's why we're doing this. This is really, the authors are saying that's why we're interested in that process, in that progression from wrong view to an inferential cognition to eventually a direct perception. Again, having an object that is slightly hidden, something that needs to be realized in order to become liberated. Okay. Now, direct perceptions in general, what is the definition of a direct perception? In that first paragraph, it talks about yogic direct perception, but talking about direct perception in general, it's a cognition that is unmistaken and free of conceptuality. We already discussed that. For example, an eye consciousness apprehending a pot. Then you have this very famous quote from the Compendium of Valid Cognition, or its auto commentary, which explains the meaning of a citation from the Abhidharma Sutra and says, someone with eye consciousness cognizes blue, but does not think this is blue. Oh, okay. So sorry, it's not that phrase I was thinking of, but it's not that quote. But anyway, so again, another quote that establishes, for instance, whether an eye consciousness is a direct perception, it does not think. It's not a conceptual mind. The phrase someone with an eye consciousness cognizes blue indicates that it's an unmistaken cognition. So it cognizes blue. I don't know how it exactly indicates that because it doesn't imply that it couldn't be mistaken, but this is the interpretation of this particular phrase. The phrase, but does not think this is blue, indicates it's free of conceptuality. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. So this quotation completely presents the definition of perception. Also, Dharmakirti's Drop of Reasoning says direct perception is unmistaken and free of conceptuality. Now, free of conceptuality, we had that before, based on mind in Tibetan Buddhism, does not mean being free of the substance of thought, because why? The self-knower apprehending a conceptual mind is not free of the substance of thought, because it's of one substantial entity with thought. We talk more about reflexive awarenesses or direct perceive self-knowers, as they're also called. But the point here is that a self-knower is always a direct perceiver, but a self-knower that is that perceives, that apprehends a conceptual mind, it's of the same substantial entity as that conceptual mind, and therefore it's not free of the substance of thought, although it's non-conceptual. Does that make sense? So they basically say you have one mind, one aspect is the conceptual mind, and the other aspect is a direct perceiver that looks at the conceptual mind. That seems really random. Like what? You have one mind and one part of it looks at itself, it's a direct perceiver, and the other part is a conceptual mind. That seems pretty made up. Actually, it's like a mind can divide into those two, but that's how they explain it. That they're so inseparably linked that it's almost like there's one mind, one part looks outside and the other part looks at itself. And so the mind that looks outside or outwards, that's outward directed, is the conceptual mind perceiving sound, for instance. And then a part of that conceptual mind, but there's no longer conceptual, but that instead is a direct perceiver that observes the conceptual mind. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So therefore it's not free of the substance of thought or free of thought in itself. That's again saying thought in itself is the isolate of thought. So that's not the meaning of it, because the inferential cognizer apprehending that sound is impermanent is free of the isolate of thought. It's not the isolate of thought. So it's free of the isolate of thought. It's not thought itself. So therefore it's free of the isolate of thought, but it's not free of thought in general. So free of thought in itself. If you look at the Tibetan, in itself, thought itself, I would say, free of thought itself. So free of thought itself means free of the isolate of thought. Okay, anyway, it was in the mind in Tibetan Buddhism, so it's just a word thing. Instead, it means being free of a construing or conceiving awareness that apprehends not word and referent, but the word generality and the referent or meaning generality as suitable to be associated. Furthermore, since this cognition itself is not a conceiving awareness, here a direct perception, is not a conceiving awareness that apprehends a word generality and a referent or meaning generality as suitable to be associated, the manner in which it's free of conceptuality was explained earlier. We talked about this before. Unmistaken means being unmistaken with regard to the appearing object. Okay, that's the Tantrika view. The nature of the conceptuality that perception is free of, and the way in which conceptual cognition operates with linguistic reference and so on, with meaning generalities and so on, was discussed when we explained how mind is categorized as either conceptual or non-conceptual in chapter 3. Just a reminder. So if you go back, you find that explanation in great detail. Now, when categorized, there are 4 kinds of direct perception. Sense perception, done. Mental perception, we covered. Reflexive awareness and yogic perception. Well, actually, reflexive awareness is included in mental direct perception. It is a mental consciousness, right? So sense perception, mental perception, reflexive awareness, and yogic perception. The definition of sense direct perception is a cognition that is unmistaken and free of conceptuality and that arises from its uncommon dominant condition, a physical sense faculty. This is 5 times, of course, 5 consciousnesses. So take the first one. So all the way from an eye consciousness to a body consciousness. The definition of a sense direct perception apprehending a form is a visible form here, a cognition that is unmistaken and free of conceptuality and that arises in dependence on its object condition or objective condition, a visible form, and its uncommon dominant condition, the eye sense faculty. In Tibetan, it just says form, but from the context, you know it's a visual form. It can be a little bit misleading or confusing. In Tibetan, the word form in certain contexts means physicality or something physical in general. In other contexts, it means a visual object, and you always know from the context. So therefore, in the definition in Tibetan, it actually just says form, but you know it's talking about an eye consciousness because of the eye sense faculty. Therefore, you know they're referring to a visual object. There are 3 kinds of sense direct perceptions. Sense direct perceptions apprehending a form that is a valid cognition, one that is a subsequent cognition, and one that is an indeterminate or inattentive perception. We still have to discuss, but that won't take long. Examples of these are respectively the first moment of a sense direct perception apprehending a form, a visual form, of course, again, but yeah. Sense direct perception in this context refers to visual form. The second moment of a sense direct perception apprehending a form, and a sense direct perception. Okay, wait. Oh, maybe it didn't give the definition of an eye consciousness before. Okay, so it just kept it. I thought it was just
No, it did.
well, it has 5 times, which range from a sense direct perception apprehending a form to a sense direct. The definition of a sense direct perception apprehending a form, yeah. So it's eye sense perfect. Yeah, it's implied in that. Usually in Tibetan, you would probably say eye sense perception, but never mind. Okay, so examples of these are the first moment of a sense direct perception apprehending a form, the second moment of a sense direct perception apprehending a form, and the sense direct perception apprehending a form that directly introduces a doubt, thinking, did I or did I not see a form? Of course, you can always debate then, well, if you have that doubt, wasn't there a moment when you did perceive something? Unless you perceive it later on and think, well, it must have been there a moment earlier, but I don't remember seeing it. You see what I'm saying? So for instance, suddenly there's this person in front of you, but you didn't see them coming. So you're wondering, did I see them coming or not? Just because they're there. So you know they must have
mental
arrived.
consciousness, so it's not a direct perceiver.
Pardon?
But then it's the mental consciousness again. We're back to the mental consciousness.
No.
The one doubting is the mental consciousness. It's not the direct perceiver.
No. Listen, first, what does it say? A sense direct perception apprehending a form that gives rise to a doubt thinking. Right? So here it's saying it's that induces. So instead of saying, usually the way it's formulated slightly differently. They say an eye consciousness apprehending form at a time when you're totally absorbed into listening to music. That's how it's usually formulated. But here they put it in a different way, which is just as correct. A sense direct perception apprehending a form that directly induces a doubt thinking, did I or did I not see form? Right? So a moment later gives rise to this. So let's say I have this apprehension. I apprehend a person coming into the room, into the room. So my eye consciousness apprehends that. It apprehends the shape and form of that person, shape and color of that person. but I'm not paying attention. I'm listening to music or whatever. And then suddenly they're in front of me. And in that moment, I have doubt. Did I see that person or not? So what gave rise to that doubt? My inattentiveness, the previous inattentiveness, which is that inattentive perception. So the doubt, as Maya says, is absolutely, it's a mental consciousness. What we're just talking about, what that inattentive mind gives rise to.
Right.
Is this clear?
So here the inattentive mind produced a mind of doubt.
Yes. Yes. It produced that inattentive mind, produced doubt because we have no memory of having seen that person come into the room. So that was triggered by that the presence of that inattentive perception. Right? So now they're suddenly in front of you, but you have no memory of them coming into the room. So there's no memory of a perception of like them coming inside. So therefore, it's that inattentive mind triggered that doubt. Yeah. I know what you're saying. It's really more the absence of of the absence of memory. But that's a permanent phenomenon. It can't produce anything. Except the awareness of an absence that could trigger that as well. But just because the awareness of an absence of memory triggered that doesn't exclude that inattentive awareness from being a cause as well.
But it seems like it would have to be indirect. Like, so they're coming in, you don't see them.
Yes.
And then suddenly you do see them.
Yes.
And it is the seeing them which causes doubt.
Well, not exclusively.
Not exclusively, but that's what directly causes the doubt. Right?
Well, I didn't say that it directly, or it doesn't say that it directly induces a doubt. It says it induces a doubt.
It does say directly. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Apprehending a form that directly induces a doubt.
Yeah.
And in the Tibetan too.
In Tibetan, it says the same. I know, I compared the two. Yeah, that directly induces a doubt.
That's a good question.
The directly. Did I not see a form? Okay, then my example just doesn't work. Then my example just doesn't work. So,
You like that example?
That was a good.
so it's not like that you see the person suddenly in front of you, because that would interrupt that direct or that continuation. So it wouldn't be that. Instead, you have a moment of, that's the difficulty. Okay, so let's put it that way. There is a moment of attentiveness in the middle. There is a moment of attentiveness in between. So you do have a short moment of perceiving an explosion, but then, or for hearing an explosion, or of seeing something, for instance, and then you're distracted again. And it's therefore all of these moments give rise to your doubt, but the last moment was an inattentive mind, so it directly induces the doubt. Yeah, sorry, I didn't pay attention to the directly. Pardon?
Could another example be like a subliminal image that's flashed like between other images?
Subliminal. What do you mean with subliminal?
Like back in the day when they were doing advertising.
They still do.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but that's
reading my mind right
I am so clairvoyant.
You see, the problem is subliminal works really well in English, but now you need to translate it into Lorig terms, right?
Yeah.
So what is that? What is that subliminal? I think that's really, really interesting, because I don't think it's an inattentive awareness. I think it's a mind that I think you're thinking of advertisement, for instance, right?
I'm not, I'm thinking of being in a train and going very fast, and there's, those figures they have for scarecrows, and you went so fast that you're like, did I see a person? Was that a farmer? It's not even inattention. It's just the speed of the train you're in. that
Is
directly
that an
makes that
independent?
out.
No, I think that's an attentive perception. That's an attentive perception.
There is a difference.
You see something, you're aware that you're seeing something. That's different. I
Hmm.
mean, what we also talk about is like having a mind that knows its object, but that is inattentive with regard to, or that is an awareness to which the object appears, but is not ascertained with regard to some object.
Right.
For instance, the texts are very clear on this. For instance, the eye consciousness apprehending vas. That mind is an inattentive perception with regard to the impermanence of vas, because it appears, but it's not, as there's no ascertainment. Now, with regard to certain objects, although the mind itself is not an inattentive perception, with regard to some objects, it can be. Now, the question would be here, perceiving something there, the shape of what looked like a person, the mind knows that, but it is inattentive as to whether it's an actual person or it just looks like a person, right? So that there is something that looks like a person, has the color and shape that represents a person that you're aware of, but you're not sure. And it could also be the example of like there's actually a person, but you don't know whether it's Bob or John. Right? You did see up an actual person, but you don't know who it was because it was too fast. The train was moving too fast. But I'm wondering about subliminal kind of messages where you actually, there is perception, there is a conceptual mind that registers, or in other words, ascertains what that eye consciousness did perceive, but your conceptual consciousness, it's forgotten, or it doesn't leave an imprint strong enough for you to be later on able to go back to it and think about it. This is usually not discussed when we talk about subconscious. It's not discussed, but it's still an important idea, except I don't think that would be an example of a mind that is inattentive, where there's no ascertainment whatsoever, and still it influences you. That's what subliminal means, right? Like without you being actually aware of that having taken place, it still influences you. But then it means there's no conceptual mind that perceived it. There are a lot of difficulties with some of these very fast moments. For instance, let me give you an example that has nothing to do with inattentive attention, or perception, but it's still something to consider. When you're asleep and your alarm clock goes off and that becomes part of your dream. It's like, what? You were awake, you were asleep while that alarm clock went off, but you probably awoke for a split second, perceived the alarm clock, and went to sleep right away. Therefore, there's later on no memory of that awakened state. I mean, I remember mornings I switch off my alarm clock and I slept in and I'm like, who switched off the alarm clock? It wasn't me. Someone was in the room. So no memory whatsoever. And so that thing, like you wake up and you're not even aware of it, but yeah, there was a conceptual mind that wanted to switch off that alarm clock, which means taking that as an example, there's so much happening in our mind. And when that moment is too short and still there's ascertainment, I'm not saying a super short moment that stands on its own and there's no ascertainment, it's an inattentive perception. Okay. But no, I'm talking about one that actually took place. There was ascertainment and still it doesn't register. So taking that weird incidents of, or not weird, not that uncommon incidents of switching off the alarm clock, well, now a subliminal message, may it be through advertisement, for instance, or a moment where you did have a short moment of perception and it did register that there was this person coming in, but then you were distracted and later on you're doubting that this actually happened. Did I make it up? Did I dream it up? Did I imagine that? That also happens. That you imagine something and it's never happened.
Or you catch something out of the corner of your eye and then you look and it's like, wait, what did I just
Yeah,
Was it
yeah.
something like that? Yeah.
Okay. Well, in this case, yeah, maybe it was too short to be able to recognize what it was. But I'm talking about a short
Yeah.
moment
Okay.
that was not so short that you can't recognize it. I mean,
Okay.
again, I heard the alarm clock. There was
Yeah.
a conceptual mind thinking, switch it off. And that happened. And I have no memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that there's
Yeah.
so many different levels. So here it gives us the basics, but we have to fill in the gaps. And you're absolutely right that directly, that term, yeah, directly here implies that can't have been a mind that comes later and then thinks back. Yeah, that is true. But you could take another kind of scenario where you did have short moments in between, but they were so short, although they registered, you doubt yourself because there's this long gap in between. And that long gap, plus that sense there was something, that gives rise to this doubt. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, wonderful. Great. You caught this. This is very good. Yeah, this directly, because that's makes all the difference. The same pattern should be extended to the remaining four sense direct perceptions. The same pattern. Yeah. You can take it with not just an eye consciousness, all the other sense perceptions. Yes. The definition of a mental direct perception is a cognition that is unmistaken and free of conceptuality that arises in dependence on its own uncommon dominant condition, a mental sense faculty. All right, sense faculty, a mental consciousness. So the Compendium of Valid Cognition, the auto commentary says, that is Asanga, Arya Asanga says, no, sorry. Compendium of, no, Arya Acharya Dignaga says, the mental cognition that perceives form and so on, being non-conceptual and engaging with the aspect of an experience, is also a type of perception. That seems to be talking about a reflexive awareness because we say nyamso nyongwa in Tibetan, like experience. The self-knower is usually described as a self-knower that experiences a conceptual mind or an eye consciousness. So the term that is used is usually not apprehending, instead it's experiencing. And therefore here it seems to be saying, because of the word experiencing an aspect of something, engaging with the aspect of an experience, it seems to be saying that it's a reflexive mind, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a way of saying the same thing with the mental direct perception in general. In general, there are diverse opinions on the question of what exactly is a mental perception of an ordinary person, and also whether such a mental perception of an ordinary person is capable of giving rise to ascertainment of its object. These will be discussed in Volume 4. It's again that kind of weird mental perception that just arises for a split second between a sense consciousness and a conceptual mind. And of course, that is not accepted by the high school. And that will be discussed, I suppose, in Volume 4, why it doesn't make sense. And now we come to the reflexive awareness. That is really important, that mind, because if you study Chittamatra and the second chapter of the Pramanavartika, for instance, is in part from the point of view of the Chittamatra, and Chittamatra plays such a big role in the Pramanavartika in general. Therefore, it's important to understand this mind. So it is a subject image, I would say an apprehender aspect. It doesn't say image, it actually has the word aspect. Subject is fine, but it's basically, it takes on the aspect of the mind that it experiences. So that is of the nature of the reflexive awareness. So in other words, a self-knower is the apprehender aspect, or it arises in the aspect of that apprehender of that mind that it perceives, and like at the same time, it's at the nature of a self-knower. The definition of a perceptual reflexive awareness is again, an apprehender aspect or a subject aspect, awareness that is unmistaken, free of conceptuality. Reflexive awareness and perceptual reflexive awareness are synonymous. No need to say that's a direct perceiver, because a self-knower or reflexive awareness is always a direct perception. Reflexive awareness is a consciousness directed exclusively inward, not outward, always inward, always looking at an inward mind. Devendra Buddhist commentary on difficult points in the exposition of valid cognition says, however, the cognition that illuminates the previous cognition inasmuch as it has the nature of illuminating itself is established to be aware of itself reflexively and not by virtue of being experienced by some other cognition. So it's basically saying it's the mind itself that is aware of itself. So one aspect of the mind is aware of itself.
Sorry, Geshe-ma.
Yes?
But is it saying here, like, however, the cognition that illuminates the previous cognition
Yeah.
is established to be aware of itself reflexively? So, like, the reflexive awareness is always experiencing or knowing the previous.
No.
So that's not what it said. Okay.
No. That's not what it means. So, for instance, let me just find the quote in here. No. Rani sewer chebe tani che lo ngama sewer chebe lo tini rani watoba gyurgi sheba shengi nyawa mayenu rani sewer chebe tani chen lo ngama sewer chebe lo tini rani watoba gyurgi. No, I think it is saying that illuminates the previous cognition. So the previous, it doesn't mean that the self-knower arises now, but it arises together in that previous cognition. So when you have a previous moment of cognition, then ordinarily what happens is, again, this is debatable, but for instance, those who do not accept a self-knower, for instance, in the Prasangika school, they will still talk about a mind that is associated with introspection, that has the mental function of introspection, the mental factor of introspection. So it can actually look at the meditating mind. And some would say the meditating mind is a moment earlier, and then introspection arises and it catches what was there a moment earlier. Right? But then some would say, no, it's two minds at the same time. They arise actually, you can have one mind that another mind observes, and then some others say, no, it's just a tiny moment earlier, and you can perceive that. Anyway, no need to go into that debate. So possibly referring to that. But here, when in the original quote, it does say, yeah, a moment earlier, but it doesn't imply that self-knower exists right now and what it experiences is a moment earlier, but instead it's saying it's of the same nature. However, the cognition that illuminates the previous, inasmuch it has the nature of illuminating itself. So it's that self-knower that basically it doesn't really say it illuminates itself. In Tibetan, I don't hear this. It becomes clear to itself. It's rather like it's rather saying it becomes clear to itself. Selvachepa. It's very difficult to translate this word. Illuminate has more like the connotation of a light illuminating something. But it kind of makes it clear. It makes itself clear in that it perceives itself. So a part of the mind perceives itself. So this is what it's saying. Illuminates the previous cognition inasmuch as it has the nature of illuminating or making clear itself by way of understanding itself, is established to be aware of itself reflexively and not by virtue of being experienced by some other cognition. And Tibetan is so much clearer. Sorry. Yeah, but again, yes, this is not saying that it's actually a previous moment because it says it's the nature of that. And if it's of the nature of something, it has to exist at the same time. Yeah. The presentation of reflexive awareness and the differences between whether reflexive awareness is accepted or not accepted according to subjects within the Buddhist tenet, according to subsects, according to subsects within the Buddhist own tenet systems will be discussed in volume 4. Subsects. So sub-schools, I think they mean. Okay, great. Time is up again. I've been racing through it because I wanted to read in Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. But please do. I'll let you know the page numbers of what you should read in Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. Just a sec. I'll look for it. 59, I think it is.
You were on 87, right? Most of them.
Not 59. No, it's page 60. No, 59. Yes, 59. On the bottom of 59 of Mind in Tibetan Buddhism, it says self-knowing direct perceivers as part of the small print. And then it describes, the definition of self-knower is that which has the aspect of an apprehender. If you could read this all the way to 60, all of 60, page 60. You can read 61 if you want, because that comparison is quite nice, the different possibilities, but you don't have to. So 59 and 60. 59 and 60. And then to read about yogic direct perceivers, please go to page 64. The second paragraph starts with this reasoning establishing a yogic direct perceiver. You could read that until it says on that same page, there is memory after its own time. 11. That's line 11 from the bottom up. I think that might be interesting. And then on the next page, 65, the whole passage after the small print. It is said that self-knowing and yogic direct perceivers must be mental direct perceivers. So this passage, the paragraph underneath it, all the way up to the small print. The small print you don't have to read. Yes, if you could read that, then my job is much easier.
I'll just do page.
Okay. 59 to 65.
Yeah, if you can read the whole thing, okay, do it. I thought to make it easier and just tell you, but if you can read the whole thing, perfect. That's best. So make it easier, yeah. And so I'll just quickly go through it tomorrow. We have a little bit left, and then the last thing left will be the inattentive awareness. There's only one page. I'll definitely try to finish it tomorrow. In case I don't, then once we meet again, because on Monday I'm leaving, Thursday I would love to have a later time because it's so early in the morning and I've basically just arrived. So for me, it would be 9:30 in the morning. Little difficult because I have to first get to my mom, and only there I can set up the class. So if on the 4th of November, no, 4th of December. 4th of December, if I could have a later time that day. But I need that day because otherwise I won't finish. So that would be Thursday. If you can let me know a later time.
Yes, Kishmasta, we have debate from 3:30 to 5. So probably what would be best is we just switch the time of this class and then debate. So then we would do it from 4 to 5. We would have this class from 4 to 5.
Perfect. That
And
gives
we'll
me
just
enough
debate
time.
it. Yeah.
That gives me enough time to set everything up. Very good. So on that day, if you just put it in the group again, please, just to remind me. So 4 p.m. on that day,
Well,
IST Indian time. Yes.
This is what Kelsey was suggesting, but I'll check with her first before
Great.
we.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you confirmed it, if everyone is okay with it, please post it in the group to remind me. I mean, I can remind you again tomorrow to do so. But yeah, anyway, then on Thursday we continue. We may have a little bit left of Nalamangi, that is of indeterminate perception or inattentive perception. But then we've got plenty of time to finish mind and mental factors. Yes.
So Friday you will be taking class, Bandhu?
There'll be class tomorrow. And
No,
Friday next week
Friday.
as well. Yeah. Oh, no. Friday, the usual time, because that's when I've settled in. But the thing is, I'm going to spend a night somewhere else first, just because I just arrived. And then the next day only, I'm going to travel to my mom's home because I arrived so late at night. And and it takes me some time to set it all up, which makes 9:30 a little difficult. That would be 9:30 in Germany, but 4 p.m. in India that would work, and the next day it's all fine. It can be as early as it is. Yes,
Perfect.
Good,
great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Dedication, having thoroughly investigated in accord with all that I've heard day and night through the four reasonings, mind born of reflection on these topics of contemplation, may this discernment sever all doubts. Thank you very much, Kishore.
Thank you. Don't forget your homework.
Yeah, it was done. Thank you.